All right. We are going to save you some money, ladies and gentlemen. We're not going to save you money. We're also going to make sure that people don't come and steal it. How does that sound? We're with Bob Bluhm, asset protection attorney to the stars. He also does estate planning. Let's just say he's the man. Bob, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Kenner. Good to be with you.
You like how I said you're just the man? That's the best way to say it, right? Oh, Bob. You know, you and I have known each other for a long time. You're one of the best guys out there. I'm not just saying that. I think if anyone is watching this and anyone's listening to this, they can rest assured that you really do know what you're saying. You do really know, you really do care about people. And you're really one who can truly add value to a solopreneur or entrepreneur. There's just no doubt about that. All right, I'm going to hit it straight with questions. I'm going to get some information out of you. We'll be talking about maybe 20, 25 minutes. We're going to get some information out of you, and you're going to add some value to the audience who are mainly real estate investors. They're also, solopreneurs. They might have maybe an LLC. They might have an S Corp. They might have a little bit of an operational company, but more than anything, you're here to add some value to these people. Talk about yourself.
Well, I'm an attorney. I happen to be based in Dallas, Texas, and I'm also the managing attorney for Asset Defense Team, which is a group of legal professionals who provide legal services to people. And as the name implies, we specialize in asset protection. And sometimes people wonder, well, what does that mean? What's asset protection? It's really an umbrella term for structuring people with limited partnerships, limited liability companies, corporations in various combinations, trusts in various combinations, so that assets are kept private, if you will, and out of sight from potential creditors, out of reach from potential creditors as well. It also involves estate planning to protect, once again, what are we trying to protect? For estate planning, we're trying to protect against probate and the expense of probate, the delays of probate, and also the lack of privacy in probate. So we also want to structure people in a way that they can take advantage of tax reduction. We are not tax people, we're not tax accountants, we're not tax lawyers, but we are able to structure people so that they then can have the right entities to be able to take advantage of the tax deductions that a professional like you would be able to introduce them to. So I advocate tax planning, tax reduction planning, which is exactly what you do. But that is a very important part of asset protection, which is why you and I affiliate with each other, because we don't offer that particular service, but it is an important piece of asset protection as well.
It's been a great partnership working with you. And by the way, who am I? I'm Kenneth French with vastsolutionsgroup.com. We're here for you doing tax, finance, and artificial intelligence to lower tax liability for small business owners, usually solopreneurs. But, it's been a great partnership. I'm not just saying that. It really has been a great partnership. I trust you more than I trust pretty much any attorney out there. You know exactly what you're talking about. You really do take the client's benefit into heart when you're providing some suggestions. So what would you say is the number one hot topic right now for, let's say, a solopreneur or a real estate investor that has an LLC as an example? I know I'm going to put you on the spot. That's a tough one, but what's the one hot topic right now?
Well, the hottest topic is the fact that there's a brand new law called the Corporate Transparency Act that everybody should be aware of, which means that, this act requires that anybody with an existing entity that was formed prior to January 1st of this year must file a report identifying who is, quote, the beneficial owner. And there's, of course, a definition of who that is. But the bottom line, just to make it simple, if you're the manager of an LLC, you're the beneficial owner. If you own at least 25% of an LLC, you're the beneficial owner. And you need to file this report by January 1st of 2025. And let's not cut it that close, get it in before January 1st. And the report is going to require your name, your date of birth, your social security number, an EIN for your entity, and a picture of your driver's license, so you can prove who you are, who you say you are. The purpose of this law, ostensibly, is for the federal government to be able to ferret out bad guys who want to hide behind anonymous shell companies like LLCs formed in various states where, it's not apparent who the owner is. And they want to make sure that money launderers, drug dealers, sex traffickers, and other bad guys are not using these entities for nefarious purposes. So that is the Corporate Transparency Act. One other point I want to raise while we're talking about this is if you've created an entity after January 1st, 2024, you have only 90 days in which to file these reports. Now, you may say, well, why don't I file a report? I don't want to. I don't like filing reports. Well, the problem is there's a penalty for non-compliance of $500 per day with no cap, and it could be extremely expensive. So everybody needs to be aware of this law, and you need to get your report filed. You can file it at www.fincen.gov/BOI if you want to file it yourself. A lot of people are having us file it for them because it's a somewhat complicated report. And if you make mistakes and you don't correct those mistakes within 30 days, you can be fined $500 a day for, once again, non-compliance. So it's a pretty critical thing to do. And that's a hot topic.
That is a hot topic. It's pretty incredible that people, there's a couple of CPAs, a couple of attorneys out there who are saying, you don't have to worry about that. It's our constitutional right not to worry about that. Well, one thing you got to remember, yeah, sure, there's $500 a day, no cap. But then again, there's jail time. It hurts your business reputation. There's a lot to it. So I would say do it now versus down the road. By the way, both of our organizations do those, not really for profit. There's not much profit there, but more it's almost just basically a value add. And I'm glad you do that and we do that as well. Wait a minute. And you haven't gone over your background. I think your background's really interesting. I mean, there's a reason people are gravitating towards you for asset protection and estate planning. Go into your background a little bit if you don't mind, Bob.
Sure. I started out many years ago as a trial lawyer and was doing trial work, suing people, defending people in court, and defending corporations and suing on behalf of corporations. And did that for a number of years. And one particular case changed it all for me because I was defending a company that everybody would recognize, brand name company, who had done something wrong. They had fired some guys because of their age, and that's age discrimination, cannot do it. And they were suing to get their jobs back or their back pay or I should say back pay, pensions restored, all their economic benefits restored for this wrongful firing. And they had the facts and law on their side. We were in trial. It was going pretty badly for us. And then the plaintiff's lawyer made a serious mistake. And I capitalized on that mistake and we won. Now, normally when you win a case, you've invested 2 or 3 years in this case. It's a huge victory and you're celebrating. But this was not a celebration because so often in trial work, it's one company suing another company. This time it was people who had sued. And, when I left the courtroom, I saw them huddled with their families and their wives were weeping. These guys were devastated because they were never going to get another job at that pay level at their age. They were done financially. And, that hurt these families. And I realized, I was part of that hurt and it was just wrong. It shouldn't have been that way. But look, I had to do my ethical duty, and that is defend your client, to the best of your ability. And it happened to be too good and we won. So the problem was for me, I just wasn't going to do that anymore. I didn't go into law for hurting people. I went into law for, truth, justice, and the American way. And it didn't turn out that way. So I just said, I don't want any part of this. And I completely switched sides and took all my courtroom experience and now use it to protect people from, frankly, lawyers like I used to be. So for a long, long time, many, many years, I've been an asset protection attorney, and it's so much more satisfying and fulfilling knowing that we're securing people's futures and protecting their families and their children from financial ruin.
So talk about asset protection. People don't realize that, corporate, piercing the corporate veil and asset protection, I kind of think they go hand in hand. Why don't you explain a little bit about what people mean when they're saying, piercing the corporate veil?
Well, if you have an entity, a corporation or an LLC or even a limited partnership, and you don't maintain it, in other, what does that mean? You don't maintain it. Well, you don't have books, financial records. You don't have an EIN maybe for. You don't have a bank account for it because think of this: what do real companies have? They have bank accounts, they have financial records, they have, an EIN, they file tax returns, they have all the indicia of a real company. And that's exactly what you need to have. If somebody has an LLC, it is a real business and needs to be treated like a real business because if it is not, here's what's going to happen. The plaintiff will go into court and say, Your Honor, so-and-so didn't treat their company like a real company, so why should I? Mm-hmm. And the court will then pierce the veil of the entity. Now, the entity is designed to protect your personal assets. In other words, any business investment we make, we realize you could lose that investment. If you buy a stock and it goes to zero, well, that's the risk you take. But you don't want to have the stock go to zero and then have somebody coming after your personal assets.
Totally, yeah.
So the whole reason that we set up an LLC or a corporation or limited partnership is to protect us from personal liability. But when the corporate veil is pierced, that's exactly what we have is unlimited personal liability. And the startling statistic is over 50% of cases have the corporate veil pierced.
Oh, really? Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah. It is that high. And it is because people do not take these entities seriously. They think, it's my entity. So what? I can do whatever I want to with it. You now have violated the alter ego doctrine. And what does alter ego means? Wow. Think of Clark Kent and Superman. They're the same person. So if you and your company are essentially the same person, there is no corporate veil. So in other words, you have to treat the company as if it's an alien, as if it's something out there that doesn't belong to you or necessarily isn't just your plaything. It's a real entity with real rules that have to be respected.
I think it's crazy that people think, I don't need a checkbook for my LLC. I don't need a bank account or an address for my LLC. But they really do, because piercing the corporate veil, that's a bad thing. I didn't know 50% over 50% or 50% have the veil basically pierced. I had no clue.
That's exactly right. It's that high. Now, one of the reasons that people have these lax attitudes about an LLC is because LLC law has changed. In other words, the first LLC was created in 1977 in Wyoming. And no other state adopted an LLC statute for about 10 years because it was completely unclear how the IRS was going to tax an LLC. The IRS finally issued regulations, and then after that 10-year period, states slowly began to adopt LLC statutes. And in the beginning, if you set up an LLC in, say, the 1990s, it was the wild, wild west. In other words, anything goes because there was no law regarding LLCs. It was just, here's the statute, here's what you got to do to set it up. You have to, have a name, file it with the Secretary of State, have a registered agent, and that's pretty much it. That's what the statute said. Over time, people abused the LLC. This situation came up, it was adjudicated. Another situation came up, went to court, and there was a court decision. And over time, the laws on LLCs have evolved more and more to look exactly like corporations. So in the beginning, we were able to say an LLC is different from a corporation because you don't have to follow the corporate formalities that are associated with a corporation. Now, that's not true at all. You do have to follow the corporate formalities because the courts have increasingly ruled that if you fail to have annual minutes, you fail to have books, profit and loss statements, et cetera, now you have failed to follow the formalities and they will pierce the corporate veil.
Here's an interesting fact. I met the guy who set up the first LLC in Wyoming. That's pretty
That is interesting.
That's pretty interesting, yeah.
Well, there's also a pretty interesting story about how that worked and or how it came about, and that is that there was an oil company in Wyoming that was doing business all over the world, and they were using effectively LLCs in these foreign countries, which limited personal liability. And they said to themselves, why don't we have this in the U.S.? And, it's kind of like Howard Schultz, who goes to Italy and finds, this cool Starbucks machine and brings it back to the U.S. Well, that's what they did here. This oil company lobbied the Wyoming legislature, which basically means they had a drink at the bar across the street, And they said, hey, why can't we do this in Wyoming? Let's create this LLC. And they did. The Wyoming legislature passed it. And that is how the first LLC was created.
I didn't know that. That's a good story. Yeah. And the way you tell is very good too. But speaking of, the way you tell a story, you're a very good presenter. Tell me about some of the cool stories. Like, you present on some cool stages. Why don't you go ahead and mention a couple of things about some of the stages on which you've been?
Well, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, those stages don't quite exist the way they did a little while ago. But I was on, like 'em or not, I was on the stage with Donald Trump, Tony Robbins, Margaret Thatcher in the earlier days, Mikhail Gorbachev, Benjamin Netanyahu, who's now the president of or prime minister of Israel, Bill Clinton, others. A lot of good people. Senators, ex-presidents, foreign leaders, and all that. That's all good. But the message hasn't changed. It is, you need to get yourself protected. You need to, not have all of your eggs in one basket, meaning owning all of your assets in your personal name. You need to think about how assets are titled. For instance, if you own a car, you don't want to have it in joint ownership, joint tenancy with right of survivorship, because now if your spouse gets into an accident, they can sue you and take every asset you own jointly with your spouse. So we have to be careful in this day and age, because frankly, you don't have to do anything wrong in America to get sued.
No, not at all. Anyone can sue anyone here.
No, yeah. Anybody can sue anyone for any reason at any time. I didn't say they would win the lawsuit, but they can tie you up in litigation for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And then your life is really not that great. You're under stress. Your eye is off the ball of your main business, and you're, spending time with lawyers and spending lots of money with lawyers just to keep what you already have. So I think it makes sense to, structure yourself in such a way that, number one, discourages lawsuits so you stay out of court. But in a worst case scenario, if you have to go to court, at least your entities are going to limit your liability, and they're going to protect you from personal liability. That's the key.
I think the big thing is when someone's structured correctly, it makes people take a pause when they do want to do a lawsuit and try to sue.
Oh, yeah.
Because when they know, let's say Bob Bluhm set up the structure, they're probably not going to get any money, because it's going to be very hard to get at that money. So I'm going to shy away from doing a lawsuit. And what I would say is most of our clients are well-heeled. Most of the listeners and viewers here are well-heeled. And if they are structured correctly, that'll make a big difference, hopefully from a lawsuit, or not even having to go down that path at all.
Right. Well, that's it. That's exactly right. Because the point of a good structure is to make it very obvious to the plaintiff's lawyer, who's looking for a quick hit, basically.
Totally.
95% of all lawsuits filed never go to trial. They settle out of court. That's the real statistic. And so most plaintiff's lawyers are looking for a settlement. And they want a quick settlement so they don't have to spend much time, much money on the case. The shorter the amount of time, the bigger the settlement, the better it is. But so the key is, if you've got a really strong structure, that discourages the plaintiff, number one, from even suing you. And then second of all, it's going to aid you in settlement negotiations, because, if they know they can wipe you out, they're not going to settle for a lower amount. On the other hand, if they can see you've got this very strong structure and they're really not going to get anything, even if they went to trial, they're going to settle more quickly for a lower amount. All right. So that's the name of the game.
Yeah. So talking about, here we're talking about asset protection. We can't forget about something that a lot of people do forget about, and that's registered agent services. Obviously, we provide registered agent services for your company. But talk about, if you can, a little bit about how important registered agent services are to the whole piercing the veil idea.
Well, it's very important because, first of all, a registered agent is a legal requirement in every state. You must maintain, if you have an entity, you must maintain registered agent service every year. And if you fail to, the registered agent has the right to withdraw as the registered agent. When that happens, your entity is no longer valid. And that means the entity does not protect you at all. They don't have to pierce the corporate veil. There is no corporate veil to pierce. So it's vitally important that people maintain registered agent service. Registered agent service is very valuable in a number of ways. Number one, you have to have it, but number two, it helps you provide, it provides you with anonymity in the sense that the Secretary of State in every state is going to ask for the name of the registered agent and the address of the registered agent. If you don't really know what you're doing, you'll think, well, I can be the registered agent and save a buck. And that's true, you can, but now guess whose name is on the Secretary of State website? It's your name and your home address, typically. And, in this day and age, it's really just not a great idea to advertise the fact that you own this company, because now what do you think a plaintiff's lawyer is going to conclude? This guy's got a company. Now I'm going to look up other companies he may own, other assets he may own. I have his home address. I can look up and find out how much equity you have in your home. Yeah, plaintiff's lawyers can do that. And they can find out virtually everything else about you. They can now do an asset search. They can find your bank account, bank balances. They can find every piece of real estate you own, aircraft, business affiliations, watercraft. They can find every type of asset you own. So it's a digital age in which we live. And so you just want to keep as much financial privacy as possible. And that's what a registered agent provides. So it's a vitally important service, which is required, but it's also advisable, even if you're tempted to be your own registered agent. Bad idea.
Yeah, most of our clients have entities in other states, and they don't have friends in other states that could help, in that regard. So they need a registered agent. But some people say, I don't need a registered agent. But everyone needs a registered agent.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a legal requirement. You cannot have an entity accepted by the Secretary of State if you don't have a registered agent. But that notion of a friend, in another state's going to do it for me. What if the friend's on vacation when a legal notice is sent? Right. Every one of these legal notices is very time sensitive. You've got maybe 20 days. I've got a lot of friends who are on vacation for a month. They're just not there. And so it's a real, or, it gets lost in the mail, or, they don't know what it is and they kind of toss it. It's just a real bad idea to use a friend as a registered agent. We would need professional registered agent services where they're there 24. Let me put it this way. A registered agent has to have a physical office, not a P.O. box, and they have to have somebody there at that office during business hours, 5 days a week. Why? Well, because if somebody's going to sue you, they have to physically hand the lawsuit to your agent, to a representative, your representative. That is the registered agent. And, if they cannot hand that, some people think it's a game and they say, well, I just don't accept service of process. Then all they have to do is attempt 3 tries to hand it to you. If you've evaded them somehow, all they have to do now is file a little bitty, 1-inch notice in the newspaper that so-and-so has been sued. And if you fail to see that, which you will, you lose the case by default.
Automatically. And that can
automatically
for millions. Yeah.
Yes, automatically.
It's a big deal.
A registered agent is a very, very big deal. So it's got to be done. Yeah. Valuable service.
And for pennies on the dollar. So, okay, we've talked about, asset protection. What about estate planning? By the way, I have a referral for you. I just remembered that. They called me yesterday. But tell me a little bit about your estate planning services that you provide to people.
We do estate planning, and estate planning typically at this point involves living trusts, which are revocable. And the reason is a living trust avoids probate. Estate taxes are no longer really an issue at the moment. The current law expires in 2025. And the exemption amount is $12.5 million per person, which means a married couple can have $25 million completely exempt from estate taxes. That is a very small percentage of Americans at this point that would be subject to estate tax. Only a few states have state inheritance taxes at this point. So if you live in one of those states, then you need to move out of that state before you die.
Okay.
And I'll give you an example. I grew up in Ohio, and Howard Metzenbaum was the senator in Ohio, who was a multimillionaire, owned parking lots all over Cleveland, et cetera, made his money. And when he retired from the Senate, and oh, by the way, and he never, ever voted to cut the estate tax. It was always, full on, let's have a high estate tax. Let's nail those rich people. And the minute he retired from the Senate, guess where he moved? Florida. No estate inheritance tax. Right.
Yeah, I knew it.
So these guys are hypocrites, Let's make sure you pay it, but I'm sure not going to.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Or maybe he liked the sun. Who knows? But I hear you.
Yeah. Right. So, there, to the extent that somebody really does have an estate worth more than $25 million, and I have several clients in that category, then we want to use various other trusts. We want to use an irrevocable life insurance trust, which we have set up for clients that you've referred me to. And that keeps the life insurance death benefit out of the estate, which prevents the estate from being, raised above the $25 million or $12.5 million limit. So irrevocable life insurance trust, not nearly as common as they once were when the estate tax exemption was $1 million, believe it or not, at one point. So it's these are very important tools, and then there are many more exotic tools, which we don't see a huge demand for, like charitable remainder trusts or CRUTs or other variations of the charitable trust. That's a possibility. There is another trust called an asset protection trust. It's a domestic asset protection trust, or a DAPT or DAPT. And that is a type of trust that does provide liability protection, whereas most trusts do not provide. Any revocable trust does not provide lawsuit protection. Irrevocable trusts do. But once again, the problem is they are irrevocable. And you want to be careful about putting assets you may need into an irrevocable trust.
Yeah, you got to be very careful. If that goes south, you're in trouble.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. So let's get ready to land this plane. So how does someone get a hold of you in case they're interested in your services?
Well, they can contact you, for instance, and you can refer us over, or if they want to call the office directly, they can call 945-542-7738, or they can go to info@assetdefenseteam.com, and you can reach us that way. But I think you're the best contact.
That sounds awesome. And I can be reached, obviously, at our website, which is vastsolutionsgroup.com. Again, vastsolutionsgroup.com. Bob, it's been a pleasure for everyone who's been here joining us. We really appreciate you. Stay tuned for the next episode of The Vast Voice.
Thank you.